Friends, I'm here to talk to you about something probably very few have heard about. And I'm addressing this to all patriots and even those progressives that think they're being progressive and that they're supporting the good guys. I know you have hearts of gold. You mean well. You've been well schooled, educated. You have compassion. And many of you are quite intelligent. You have some hefty alphabet soup behind your name. But despite all of that, you're completely unaware of what is really going on. As well as many patriots who think that this will all be over as soon as the military wraps up the tribunals. They'll be coming to put Trump back into the White House. And I'm not going to get into the details of that aspect because there are many patriots out there, many of them I listen to. I have a lot of respect for them. And after hearing this, they may not have any respect for me, and they may think that I'm completely crazy. I understand that. But I think that there are a few of us that have taken on a role to help those of you who have figured out that things don't add up, that we're living in a time of astounding absurdity, things that we never would have believed would be accepted by the mainstream press, by the authorities. And rather than talk about those details, I just want to point out that despite all of the political ongoings, the show, and it is a show, it's really what it is. Don't get lost in that show. Something big this way comes. And some of you will call it the wrath of God. These are the end times, and we don't even have to go into the religious aspects of this. But we are being distracted. Inflation has picked up at a pretty rapid clip, over 17%. Ultimate Car Wash used to be $12 for 10 years, $12. Now it's jumped to $15. Things that were $2 or $3 are now $4 or $5. A loaf of bread that was $2.99, $3.99, now $5.99. It's just outrageous. But when you consider what we are really facing, you may want to give this a second thought. So, what is it that I'm talking about? I'm talking about a series of cataclysms that the U.S. military and most of our political leaders have known about. They've known that it's coming. They were told that it was coming many years ago. They didn't prepare except to prepare to feather their own nests. They haven't done anything, most of them, for the common good. And so here we are about to hold the bag, which is empty. The cat has already done left the bag. And there's nothing coming to fill it. Actually, people in responsible positions have taken some steps to make sure that most of us are going to be at least fed and housed and taken care of, because there will be several million fewer of us after this first set of cataclysms unfolds. I'm speaking of the New Madrid adjustment, the New Madrid seismic zone, the much dreaded earthquake that will essentially rip asunder the United States from Chicago down to New Orleans and from the St. Lawrence Seaway over to Chicago. It's been some time in the making. There are signs out there, and I'll go over a few of them. But before I do that, I want to point out to you that many of us, if we were in those positions of power, I'm sorry to say we would probably be making some of the same decisions. And no matter whether the commander-in-chief is orange or deathly pale, is creepy, bombastic, that's not as important as the collective cataclysm that we're all going to be facing. There are many reasons for the political situation being what it is. As I said, I'm not here to go into detail about that. But when you hear the phrase, watch the water, I want you to think of the Mississippi River, the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, because it will be biblical. It will be biblical the way that Moses crossed the Red Sea. It's going to be worse than that. And when it gets to the other side of the Atlantic, millions will perish in a horrific manner. I think you can begin to understand why you're being told you have to stay in position, why you have to socially distance yourself. And that's after all manner of solutions have been offered. It's still the same. And why do you think the Liberal Party of Canada was talking about internment centers last year when it was leaked to us, to the public, from at least one member of the Liberal Party, that the plan was to solicit quotations for bids to either produce them, build them from new, or to radically moderate or rehabilitate, change existing structures to be used as internment centers. Is it strictly because of a biological event, a global pandemic? You can decide for yourselves, because there's ample evidence and research that indicates there's something far bigger at stake here. They are concerned that there will be millions, tens of millions, in fact hundreds of millions, that if they knew the true scope of what is about to occur, they wouldn't be doing this. Even good guys are supporting this effort because it will help them to track us. Not only to track us, but to eliminate undesirable elements of the population because of the massive need to feed, clothe, and house them. And because of the erratic weather and a number of other very important factors, the supply chains are being destroyed. They're just coming to nothing. They're drying up. Even a clerk at a local retail establishment told me just today they only get one truck a week instead of two. Why is this happening? Why is bacon now $6 a pound? On sale, $5.99 a pound. How did that happen? It was $3.59 6-7 months ago. Even when it wasn't on sale, it was $4.59. But $5.99, $6 a pound? There's something wrong. Inflation does not go up that much in such a short amount of time for no reason. So, the important thing to take away from this is that many people living along the Mississippi River, along the Gulf Coast and the eastern coast of the United States, and especially in Western Europe, most of Great Britain, will experience 100-foot, 200-foot, 300-foot tsunami waves that will wash over Western Europe and then wash back out to sea, come back across the ocean, and turn D.C. back into a swampland. Why do you think the swamp is not just metaphorical, but it will soon become a reality again? Why are so many federal agencies, the U.S. federal government, why have they seemed to close up, boarded up? D.C. is a ghost town, only a skeleton crew in most of these buildings. Is it strictly because of the biological Or could there be another reason? Is it because that maybe they have all migrated, been transferred to the new or proposed new capital of the United States in Colorado? Could that be why? Or am I just another crazy fool? Well, I think that those of you who are aware of the many prophecies, the predictions, who have watched the trail of death and enforced silence, the demotion, the shunning and ostracization of academics who are well versed in many of these disciplines, who refuse to be silenced. Well, why is this allowed to happen? Why are so many people willing to accept this? They've turned into hand-wringers and shoulder shruggers. Censorship. It's bad, but, well, what are you going to do? There's a lot you can do. There's a lot that our forefathers did. But when you realize the situation, and you know that you could either put your energy into doing something to, what is the word, raise the rafters? You could commit violent acts, melt away into the night after defending our southern border, as I've heard many talk about. You don't want to do that. The best thing is to prepare yourself, your family, your loved ones, not just in terms of having enough food to get through a crisis for several months, but to be able to grow your own food regularly, to producing your own power, to cooperating in a small community, maybe a larger community. Definitely not a large enough community that would come to the attention of the authorities in a very negative way. But you want to take care of yourself and your loved ones. I'm trying to consider other implications that you should be aware of. But if you've been watching seismic disturbances, and you know who talks about this the most, people like Dutch Sense. In fact, I shouldn't even mention anyone's name because there are so many good people in all disciplines who are out there saying what they need to say, helping to wake up the rest of us. And my hat's off to so many of them. Like I said before, I have a lot of respect for them. But many of them are completely missing this. They think this is all a blue sky scenario. The good guys will finally come to the rescue, and the military will do what has to be done. The adults will step up to the plate, because they don't know that if they were in that same position, what would they do differently, knowing what is coming? Because this first round of cataclysms will be just the first. Now, is this a meteorological event only? No. It's within the ancient texts of our heritage, our civilization, which too many people, unfortunately, are cognitively miserly about. It's a word I learned from God Said, another man who was a guest of one of my favorite YouTubers, but it's his real name. The Cosmic Jokester must have helped with that, but it's God Said, and he talks about the psychology of our behavior, and he broached that term. And I think it's appropriate, because people don't want to be seen as stupid. They're not really stupid. Many are distracted. They're under a lot of pressure. They're trying to raise their families and commit to their jobs. And yet, on a subconscious level, many are really distracted by something and not sure what it is. And hopefully they will tune in to that voice deep down inside. And one of the things that we'll tell them is that they need to stop being so miserly and intellectually lazy and start digging. And that doesn't mean to go using Google. We know all about that. There are other ways to look up information. Even though a lot of it is being scrubbed from the internet, there are many that are talking about it. There's so much that we all have to learn and to share. But the important thing is that this is a cyclical event. It occurs every so often in the history of our planet. You'll find that to be true. once you start digging, if you're unaware of this, take that time. Don't be part of that unconscious conspiracy to deprive the rest of us of our liberty, of our freedom. And try to understand your neighbor. Work with them if you can, because we are not all in the same place. We are all facing the same thing. But many of us have exploited other humans, murdered them, and taken advantage of them, hurt them, often unconsciously or unwittingly. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to have to face as we go into this period of time, which has really already begun. We should be thankful in many ways that we're not being asked to fight a physical war, although many of us would prefer to do that, and we would gladly volunteer to do it, if that's all that it would take, but it's not. We're in uncharted territory. This concept of devolution, I was speaking about it with a friend earlier, and reading about it, it's recently come up in conversation. It's not really the opposite of revolution, but devolution essentially means that the central government willingly, the executive anyway, the administrative, executive, central government, devolves its authority to local, to regional authorities in its chain of command. Later on, they will then bring that power back to the central executive. But in the meantime, the reason for this devolution is not necessarily all political as part of this war against those who would deprive us of our democracy, because they have certainly done a lot to do that, although for many of us it's very hard to tell where the battle lines are being drawn. And we don't know if something is being done merely to put on a show for us, or if it's real, or if the people that are behind it mean us ill, mean us harm. America does have a lot of faults, and eventually the price will have to be paid for the things that we've done, such things as overthrowing the Iranian People's Choice of Mossadegh in 1953 in favor of British and American oil companies. That's never been assuaged, although we can say, well, they took our hostages in 1979, and maybe there's some truth to that. But it goes far deeper than that. There are many other crimes that we have committed in the name of democracy and defending our freedom. And so many hundreds of thousands of idealistic young American men and women have gone to fight in wars that they are not fighting to defend America. They're not fighting to defend our freedom. Ever since World War II, they have been fighting mercenary wars, wars of corporations, wars that have benefited, for the most part, elements of the so-called deep state, a cabal, if you will. In any event, that's all behind us, but we have to acknowledge that we did do those things because the people on the other side of the aisle from the patriots, who are still deluded into thinking they're fighting the good guys against those rabidly racist, sexist, rich guys that have been so pampered all their life. That's another stereotype. Both political parties in the United States are but stereotypes now. None of them apply. Neither of them apply. The people that operate within those political parties, they make the difference. And there are good values in both parties. We need to rescue the Democratic Party from the people that hijacked it within the past 10 years, maybe even longer. In fact, when it was really founded as the modern political party, it was done so intentionally to place two of the largest oppressed demographic groups into the same camp to give it enough numbers that they could actually pull off electoral victories that would result in the centralization of the money authority. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, I don't need to go into detail. The rest of you, I hope that you start digging and refuse to be cognitive minusers anymore. Anyway, I wanted to at least let you know that what you'll be finding out very soon is that the people that are in control, whether they are all in control or they're fighting for control or exactly who is in control, they're all facing the same problem. They cannot tell us the truth because to do so would collapse our economy. That's why it's left to people like myself and others who know about this and should be speaking up right about now, even at the risk of being killed, injured. I lived for many years with that threat after I found out the truth of the things that I'm speaking to you about. And one of the people that gave me some of that information, unwittingly, not knowing what he had given me, I believe was killed. He was a member of the Special Forces of Belgium, and he took part in a very special operation designed to train the military to rescue the most elite members of European royalty, of the European Union, people in power in Europe. And I think they killed him for what he did, for telling me. Now, I've tried to keep the details of this out of public eye, but only to let you know that his death will not be in vain. You need to know. The elite know this. They have been told what was going to happen many years ago. At least in 1954. If they didn't know of it before, they certainly knew of it after then. Because that's when President Eisenhower held a huge meeting at Muroc Airfield, now Edwards Air Force Base. If you want to know more about it, look into it. Do your own research. You hear it all the time. So don't be counting your chickens before they hatch. It will be biblical. It will be horrendous. Don't think that because you haven't done anything that bad that you're not facing the same thing. There will be a minority of people that are intent on keeping us blinded to the truth of all of this. Just as you've been learning that there are thousands of people in positions of power, whether it's Hollywood, the media, fashion, music, political power, publishing, academia, that have been engaging in some of the worst satanic practices because they actually believe in the satanic practices that they take part in. They indulge in adrenochrome because it gives them the youth that they crave. What they don't realize until it's too late is that they sacrifice their own ability to generate their own life-giving substances as a result, and when it's taken away from them, they shrivel up and die. Again, that's for other people to tell you about. All of this is connected. This is all part of the same situation. We are all facing the graduation test. Some of us will pillage and plunder the rest of us and continue to exploit other humans. Others will take the time to finally get to know their friends, neighbors, and others that will work together to survive what is coming. We have been so spoiled for so long. Many will not know what to do, and they will simply sit there, starve in place. That's what we have to look forward to under a year's time. So please do your research and look into this. The New Madrid seismic zone will be breaking this country apart.